Hello science students, welcome to the tour of the cell. First up we got the plasma membrane, or cell membrane. Now this surrounds the entire cell, whether it be prokaryotic or eukaryotic. It's in all cells. It's just a thin layer that surrounds the cell. Now more detailed look at it is it has hydrophilic heads and some hydrophobic tails. This separate them. Also, the cell membrane separates the outside world from the inside of the cell. And also sometimes there's the proteins in the middle of the cell membrane, and they act like gates to the cell. They control what goes in and what goes out. And now this can be compared to a wall with a gate. Got the gate here, which is like the proteins, and then you got like the hydrophilic tails and the hydrophobic heads. No, hydrophilic heads, hydrophobic tails. Next up is the nucleus. Now the nucleus also has a membrane, but it's also a double membrane, so it has even more protection. Now the nucleus has a nucleolus and chromatin. Chromatin is basically chromosomes, which are held inside the nucleus. And the nucleus, as I explained before, has a double membrane. Now the double membrane surrounds the entire nucleus, and as Sam Wu said, it's a double guard. And now the nucleus controls what goes on inside the cell. It controls all aspects of the cell. What does what. And that you can compare that to a CEO of a company, because a CEO kind of controls everything. They're in charge, just like the nucleus. Next up is cytoplasm. Now the cytoplasm is just the filling inside the cell where none of the other organelles go. It's just the filling for the cell. And it's easy to move around. It's easy for the organelles to move around in. And this can be compared to like an ice cream sandwich, where the cytoplasm is the ice cream filling. That looks delicious. Next up is mitochondria. Now mitochondria, they were like the energy producers of the cell. They produced ATP, which is a chemical used by the cell, and ATP is energy. And the more surface area inside the mitochondria, the more ATP that is produced. And this can be compared to like a power plant. It can be like a coal power plant or something, because they both produce energy. Next up we have ribosomes, and these make proteins. And now this is basically what a ribosome looks like. It has a large subunit and a small subunit. And sometimes inside the cell, the ribosomes are unbound or bound. When they're bound, they're attached to the endoplasmic reticulum, or ER. This is kind of what they look like on the ER. And I can compare the ribosomes to like the worker bee, because ribosomes make proteins as worker bees make honey. Next up, we have lysosomes. Now in lysosomes, they're like the digestion part of the cell. One of the things that can happen is that food particles go into the lysosome like this. And these are digestive enzymes. Now the food particles are broken down by the digestive enzymes, and then they come out as nutrients that the cell can use. And you can compare this to a recycling bin. Reduce, reuse, recycle. I recommend you do that. Next up is the endoplasmic reticulum, or ER for short. Now the ER can be rough, or the ER can be smooth. Now, a rough ER has ribosomes and a smooth does not. What the ER does, it's like a housing area for the ribosomes, and it helps ship the proteins out to the next part. And you can compare this to like the hive where the worker bees work in, because the ribosomes are like the worker bees and the ER is like the hive. Next up, we have the Golgi body, or Golgi apparatus. Now the Golgi apparatus has two ends, the receiving end, that side, and the shipping side. Now, Golgi body, the incoming vessel has proteins in it, which are made from the ribosomes, which come from the ER, and they go into the Golgi body for a finishing plant, like a packaging finishing plant, something like that, and that has forming vesicles, which finishing up the proteins made from the ribosomes, and then they come out the shipping end in a vesicle. Now this can be compared to like just a storage facility / warehouse where all the stuff is stored and it's like modified, like make sure it's all completely done. Next up, second to last, we got cilia. Now cilia are very short and numerous, and they help move cells around, especially like prokaryotic cells. And an example of cilia is the lining of our respiratory tract. They help move all the gunk out from our lungs because that's not good for our lungs. They help do that. And this is kind of a more detailed structure of the cilia. It has a bunch of microtubules, or whatever, how you pronounce it. Now you got 8 microtubule doublets on the outside, and then you got 1 center microtubule on the inside, and then you got radial spokes going out from the center. This is basically a detailed representation of part of a cilia. And now a cilia can be compared to a broom, because a broom helps sweep away items, and the cilia helps get mucus out of your lungs. And last but not least is the cytoskeleton. Now cytoskeleton basically is like the support system of a cell. It helps keep the cell's structure, and it also helps cell motility. Now there is three different parts to the cytoskeleton. You got microtubules, which are in cilia. You got microfilaments and intermediate filaments. And of course the weather is going to bother me. And they help support the cell and improve cell motility. And this can be compared to the framework of the building, because the cytoskeleton gives shape to the cell and helps support it, and the framework of a building helps support and give shape to the building. And now, you might be wondering what these lines are, and I'll tell you. Now, some of the organelles can be grouped into little groups. The cilia and the cytoskeleton are part of the organelles involved with support and movement. The Golgi body, Endoplasmic Reticulum, ribosomes, and Nucleus are involved with manufacturing in the cell. And the lysosome is one of the organelles involved with breakdown inside the cell. And the mitochondria is the animal cell version of energy processing, while chloroplasts are for plant cells. And then the final lines coming from the cell membrane, the nucleus, the mitochondria, no, not the mitochondria, the ER, the Golgi body, and the lysosome are all part of the endomembrane system, because the ER is connected to the nucleus and the outer membrane of the nucleus, and the ribosomes are on the ER, and they make the proteins. Proteins are shipped off to the Golgi body, which finish them and make sure they're all good, and then once they are done, some of them go to the cell membrane to help rebuild it or fix any holes or like that. And that was the tour of the cell. I hope you all enjoyed, and